there's some people out there that are awesome, and they've been where you've been. They know what you're doing, and they can speak into you, and that made all the difference. And so, I started getting around other people that were like me, and we gradually got to where we're now very direct. When there's a problem brewing, we deal with it immediately. And I have a leadership group that when we need to, we pull them all together, and sometimes we have a 4-on-1 conversation, and but to be sure that we're fair with people, and that we give them not only here's the issue, but give them a path for reconciliation, so they can get in line with what we're doing, or determine maybe this isn't the place for them. And because I got to be humble enough to know that I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and what we're doing isn't everybody's cup of tea. It doesn't have to be. There's so many things out there and so many different people. So I just had to realize that. But to hold a person in a place, not correcting them, and then creating that toxic place, that's the worst thing you can do as a leader to people. Is have a place where nobody's happy and everybody's struggling, to just get up in the morning.
All right, guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Hart Hustle Podcast. Now, I'm incredibly blessed to be sitting across this table from another amazing leader. I've got Brett Clancy here sitting across the table from me. He is the owner and franchisee of Christian Brothers Automotive. Brett, welcome to the show, man.
Good to be here, Keenan. Thanks for having me.
So, Brett, part of what I thought was really interesting was how somebody becomes an owner of an automotive chain, if you will. Now, to kind of talk about how you set yourself up for this opportunity, you said that as you became a college graduate, you had zero debt. That put you in a position to make some good decisions. How did you come out of college with zero debt?
Well, it starts with a mindset. I didn't even have a credit card. And I remember going with the first day on campus, being shocked that there was a table there, and it was some credit card company. Come and sign
your life away.
Yeah, and I thought, you do realize these people don't have any money.
Exactly.
But yeah, we just, I put my wife through college first. So I worked full time, and then she came out and she got a job doing even better than I was doing at the time. And so, and that whole thing was, I had told her the only way she would go to college is if I promised to go after her. And I said, oh, yeah. And, being a newlywed guy, I thought, yeah, she'll forget about it. And she didn't. Graduation day, I said, okay, it's your turn. And I'm like, So we did that. So we spent 7 years with one of us in college, our first 7 years of marriage. And so just, worked in between and, worked when we could. And of course, had our firstborn while I was in school, and bought a house while we were in school, and thanks to the GI Bill, I got me one of those zero down deals that Dave Ramsey would just have a fit. You told him you were doing it ahead of time. But yeah, it was just a mindset, and we've always been very debt averse, and it's one thing both me and my wife came to understand very early, and that's the power of compound interest. Mm-hmm. And you want it working for you, not against you. And you get that debt going, and it's working against you. It's very hard to get out of.
Yeah. Now, while you were putting your wife through college, right, before you thought that she wasn't going to hold you to the agreement that you made, what kind of places were you working in where you could afford to put your wife through college, build a house, all of these type of things? What were you doing?
Yeah, so my family had a door and millwork business, and I kind of grew up in that, just working as a kid. But I worked at Kenworth in the factory when I got out of the military, and decided assembly line just wasn't going to be for me. And so I went to work for my dad, and I did everything from drive trucks to being on the back end of things, purchasing, inventory control, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of warehouse. We had about 50 employees at our peak back then, and it was a fun business. I did sell for a while, but I found there was a big void in the back end, which was hurting my ability to sell. So I jumped into the back end of things and really kind of found my gifting was really in the operational side of things. So that's what I was doing. And, but working for your dad, I know some dads, I guess, are a lot cooler than mine. Mine was teaching me the value of $1 every day.
I was going to say, I started my company back in 2014 with my father as well. And it's an interesting experience working with people who you love, you know what I mean? Because they hold you to a higher standard. They can teach you some lessons that are a little bit sharper than everybody else. But you also kind of, as the youngin, have to kind of take it on the chin and look for understanding of why you're being taught these lessons.
Absolutely. And I figured working for my dad is still the toughest guy I ever worked for. And nobody's ever had that, taken away from him. He was tough. So I knew early on, if I can work for this guy, I can work for anybody. Yeah.
How do you think that sets you up to be a leader of your own organization? Because we talked a little bit about your passion for sales, right? You pivot, get into operations, find that that's your gift. How do we become a franchisee of multiple locations here? How's that work out?
Well, a lot of times I feel like I'm channeling my dad, because my dad was an awesome leader. To have a company with 50 employees doing all kinds of things takes some bandwidth, and he was a military guy as well. And so, if you want to learn leadership, join the military. They will teach it to you. So just using those kind of skills just kind of programmed me that was going to be the way I was going to end up. And pretty much my whole career, I generally, whatever I start at, I end up running eventually, and sometimes quicker than others, as we discussed previously. But it was, and then the whole franchise thing, just timing was everything. I was getting kind of to really could see the end of the line of where I was at, and when Christian Brothers popped up in the area where we were living at the time, it was just kind of one of the things. Well, I'll see if I qualify, and I just one step at a time. And next thing I knew, I was qualified and being told I had to move. So it set off a whole nother adventure. So
what are some of those early conversations like, right? Because one of my favorite conversations is, working a 9 to 5, then jumping the chasm to having a 24/7 365 is a completely different animal. So what were some of the conversations you were having with your wife, other support system, about like, hey, I'm going to make this jump and become the owner of my own franchise?
Well, this wasn't our first go around. I was an Edward Jones investment guy for 4 years, 2 years before the World Trade Center blew up and bled to death for 2 years after. And I was just too new in the business and just couldn't sustain it. And really, we got to a bad place financially. And my wife finally told me, because that's one of my shortcomings, I won't quit anything. And I was, every day I got up, how am I going to make this work? And she finally just said, we're at the end of the rope. You need to go get a job. And
how was that realization for you? Because when we have the stick-to-itness nature of us, right, quitting is not an option. Sometimes it takes someone who we truly respect and love to say, hey, listen, this is the end of this journey. We need to pivot. Were you readily available to do that, or were you kind of taking a little bit of convincing?
Yeah, no, I learned long ago, my biggest asset's my wife. And if I listen to her, I realized long ago she sees things that I don't see, and hears things and senses different things, and her opinion on things a lot of times is just dead on, and she's speaking into a blind spot for me. And so when she came and told me that, I of course, there was a lot of back and forth. Well, really, how broke are we really?
Mhm.
And basically she said there not another dime I can squeeze out of this thing, and uh, we need to we need to pivot. And so a lot of guys at the time were doing the same thing, and that was a rough time for the investment world, and then with all the Sarbanes-Oxley and everything that came in, there was a lot of transition, a lot of new things coming down the pike. So I, we didn't really battle over it. When she told me it was over, it was over. And so, but fortunately, I had a great net. I've always been a networker, and I had a job the next day. So, worked for a couple startups after that, which was fun because they were entrepreneurial guys and doing, really haywire stuff outside of the box, and it was brutal, tough to make money, and I was making enough, but to get things by, but we weren't making headway, and so finally I did score a job with a local body shop supply company, and became their vice president, in a few years, after making a couple bold recommendations that they took me up on, and then I had to pull it off, and that's being an entrepreneur. So even though I didn't own the business, I was in an entrepreneurial enterprise and was operating as such. And really, one of the biggest things that always determined whether I would take a job is what I can learn while I'm there.
Mhm.
And I thought, I can learn, how to run an organization here. We had 3 stores at the time, 3 locations. That rose to 5, and I think he's beyond that now. So he's done very well. His kids have all come in and taken up positions in the company. So they've got a lot of bandwidth now. They're able to run a bigger organization, and it was great. It was great for me, but all things get to it. You get it built, and that's my challenge. Is I'm a builder, not a maintainer.
Oh, you're a person who loves the growth process, figuring out, overcoming the challenges, and then you're ready to cut it loose.
Yeah, and I'm that guy on the Colby index. If you ever look at that, I'm very high on the quick start,
Yeah.
very low on the follow through. So I have to surround myself with people that do that and love that. And so that was kind of the challenge there. 8 years of that, and then Christian Brothers was there. It was actually about 6 years, because it took from the time I started talking to Christian Brothers to the time we actually moved to Idaho and opened that store was over 2 years.
Wow.
So it takes about when all the lights are green, it takes over a year to build a Christian Brothers Automotive shop. So,
Mm.
And then the rest of it was just getting in the queue, because Christian Brothers builds with the cash they got. They don't borrow money. They build with their own.
What a concept.
So that limits how many you do a year. I think right now their pipeline's very full. I don't know how many years out they are, but we're growing at about 25 a year now.
Wow.
And when I joined, we were growing at about 10 a year. So it's really multiplied. It's been a great time to get into this industry, and of course then the manufacturers and all the inflation has made it to where people are hanging onto their cars a lot longer. So you got to have good, skilled people that can keep those cars on the road, and we really are doing well at filling that niche.
What was it about the Christian Brothers franchises that kind of really aligned with you? Because you could have, I'm sure, looked at many different opportunities. Was there something special about this opportunity?
Yeah, it's a faith-based company. That was a biggie for me. In my previous work, we were a couple of Christian guys and pretty active in our faith, and we had a discussion one day about what it is to be a Christian business versus a Christian-owned business. And that was really kind of a key conversation for us. And we
What was that
decided,
conversation like, Brett? What is the difference in what is that conversation that you guys had?
so we were, as a result of our conversation, we determined we were a Christian owned business. So you got a guy that's an owner that he's got his set of, rules and things that he lives by, and that's how he runs the business. And whereas a Christian business, we're a little more active in expressing our faith through the work that we do. And so, what really attracted me to Christian Brothers was they are an overtly Christian organization. When I was with the previous company, we were more of a covertly.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't, and we don't advertise it anyway. It's just it wasn't in our name. We didn't have crosses on the wall and things like that. It was. I mean, I've been into some guys they've got crosses or crucifixes on the wall. It's very evident when you walk in there. But with the previous company, that we weren't there yet, but we were evolving that way. And so we did get some outside coaching through a group called C12. We were part of that for 8 years. I was anyway. He's still part of that and to this day. But when I was looking at that, as we transitioned that, basically then it's like, how do you care for your employees? And so we had a chaplaincy service that came in, visited all our stores. We had a chaplain guy that, came out and visited. And, so we provided pastoral care for our employees should they want that. Of course, nothing's ever forced, and we don't set criteria like you have to be a Christian to work here, but we do adhere to Christian values and how we operate. We don't lie, we don't cheat, we're very transparent. We try to do the best for everybody, and we're in a tough business. A lot of people, they're at a disadvantage when their car's broken. Most people don't even know how to lift the hood of the thing, and so they've got to be able to trust you because you're gonna tell them what it's going to take to maintain that car and keep it in really good, operating, as near new as you can possibly do.
Which seems like in direct contrast to the reputation, right, that the automotive space really has. I have experience in this. We recently sold my girlfriend's car to one of her friends, and she sent us an email or sent us a text and said, "Hey, I just went to go get my oil changed, and they said I need a new radiator, I need a new alternator, I need all 4 rotors that I need to have replaced." And so I sent her the invoice of the work that we literally had just done before we sold the car, and she was like, "Oh, I think these guys were lying to me. I guess I can't trust the people at the body shop or at the the Jiffy Lube or wherever she was at." And it seems like the faith element of your guys' business, do not lie, do what is right, is in direct contrast to that, but it also can be used as a superpower for your guys' culture.
It is, and it's unfortunate. I hate hearing stories like that, but unfortunately, they do occur. When I talked to the founder of the company, which was a pretty cool thing, when I was going through the process of being selected as a franchisee, you have an interview with the CEO and founder, and he explained to me that their whole goal was to be a light in the automotive industry. And so what does that mean? That means showing everybody how you can do it. Because at the end of the day, there are so many broken cars out there that need help. You don't need to cheat people. You don't need to, dream up stuff that's wrong with the car. It's just going to be, it's coming in faster than you can take care of it, believe me. And especially when you start doing the business right, word of mouth and just our own, just our customers telling, people, we've got raving fans out there, so you don't have to do that. But what's really cool is, we have a certain way we do things. We have training that's, we do put an emphasis on the biblical background on what we're doing and why we do it. And again, we're not shoving it down anybody's throat, but when you hear that saying, "Hey, go the extra mile," what does that mean? Where did that come from? Well, that's a biblical passage where a guy was being compelled to carry a load for a Roman soldier. They could compel you to carry their stuff for a mile, and so to be, and Christ's answer for that is take that load for 2 miles. Go the extra mile, so that you're not a slave. You're of your own free will. You are serving, and so that's kind of where it comes from. And so, we all say that all the time, but really, when you think about where it comes
I had no idea where that came from.
Yeah.
And
the verse is escaping me right now, but it's in there. Trust me. Yeah. So, but we explain these things, and a lot of people, wow, it's just part of our culture. We are still a Christian nation, and so a lot of the things that we were founded on, we've been saying these things for 250 years. So there's a lot of cool stuff in there. So, but that was the thing. And then when you bring people up in this system and you teach them how to do it, it'd be great if everybody stayed with me forever, but people's lives change, their trajectories change. We've had several people that have left on great terms with us, and they've gone on to other shops. And what's awesome is I know that they are spreading that light, because they're going to go in there with our way of doing things, and then that somehow there'll be a change in the culture of where they go, and that's a win. So that accomplishes our long-term vision.
There's a phrase that says, "Train them so good they can leave. Treat them so good that they stay." Right?
Absolutely.
At any point in time during your career, did you ever feel a certain way about people leaving the organization to kind of pursue their own passions and bigger opportunities?
I think when I was newer in it, it almost felt like a betrayal. Because I do really try to treat my folks well, pay them well, be sensitive to, what's going on in their lives, and you allow employees to tell you what's going on in their lives. You can make a difference. And, sometimes people don't want to hear it. Sometimes it's messy. And sometimes you got to just have grace for people and help them through things, because they'll if they come through it, okay, they'll be the greatest employee you ever had. And but as I grew up a little bit, got a little more mature in my leadership, I nowadays I just feel like it's a win for either, because it's our overarching, one of our overarching visions is to be that light. So I know if they go somewhere else, they're gonna be that light, as well. So
how have you changed as a leader in the 11 years that you've been spending in this space, right? With your own organization, you're the boss. How have you changed the way in which you lead others?
That's been that's the best part about being in business, is the growth that you can engage in. I started off really being too far on the mercy side, and to the point of, I would not have those difficult conversations that you need to have with people. And then it would end up costing me, just not only an emotional baggage and heartache, but it hurt the business, because
you would lean away from those conflicting conversations.
I was always afraid to have those, because I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. And I'm a type A guy. I'm a driver off the charts. I remember a guy gave me one of these things, one of those tests, the disc test, and he was walking around and he had a comment for everybody. And he came up to me to give me my results, and he said, "There's a desert island somewhere in need of a dictator, and I'm going to send him your name." And when you have that type of personality, you really have to be careful of how you treat people, because it's very easy to be insensitive and even hurtful. And it's not something you mean to do, but you're wired that way. So in being aware of that, then pulling back so far to where, I became a doormat and really ineffective. And so that took about 3 years in. I kind of got to a crisis point where things weren't working. I couldn't fix them. But I was transparent with people that I was, that I respected and knew as leaders in this industry. And they gave me some great advice, and I took it. And basically, I had to change out the whole front crew of the shop and start it all over again. And with me running, doing writing service, doing everything.
Why'd you have to do that, Brett?
Because we just had it became a toxic environment, and that I couldn't turn these people. And so I also needed get some coaching on how to manage me. And, because ultimately I was the problem. I was the the block in the stream there. And so my just unwillingness to have those conversations and to be direct and have that vision out there so that everybody knows what they're doing. It was, I needed, I wasn't going to get there by myself because my best thinking got me there, so we had to, that's when I really discovered coaching as a superpower. There's some people out there that are awesome, and they've been where you've been. They know what you're doing, and they can speak into you, and that made all the difference. And so, I started getting around other people that were like me, and we gradually got to where we're now very direct. When there's a problem brewing, we deal with it immediately. And I have a leadership group that when we need to, we pull them all together, and sometimes we have a 4-on-1 conversation, and but to be sure that we're fair with people and that we give them not only here's the issue, but give them a path for reconciliation so they can get in line with what we're doing, or determine maybe this isn't the place for them. And because I got to be humble enough to know that I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and what we're doing isn't everybody's cup of tea. It doesn't have to be. There's so many things out there and so many different people. So I just had to realize that. But to hold a person in a place, not correcting them, and then creating that toxic place that's the worst thing you can do as a leader to people. Is have a place where nobody's happy and everybody's struggling, to just get up in the morning.
This is why I love the landscape of entrepreneurship, because most of the time, right, we are forced to look in the mirror at our own inefficiencies. They say that a business will grow to the constraints of the CEO, of the leader, whoever that is. And if your business isn't growing past what you think it should be, then sometimes we need to look in that mirror and have a true conversation with ourselves about what we could be doing better. And it sounds like you've been trained and you've had a lot of experience in looking into that mirror of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and it's sometimes very hard to look in.
It's scary.
It is. But after you do it for a while, then it becomes automatic. And and what's really a gutsy move is to ask your team what they think of you. A 360 review is a scary thing. And especially if you do it anonymously so they can talk freely.
I agree. And that was something I did when I was 31 years old with my team for the first time. And I'll tell you what, some of those anonymous responses that came back were very much aligned with Keenan likes to be a starter. He's an idea guy. He needs to work on his follow through. We constantly are pivoting at XYZ. And that took a lot of time for me to be humble enough to accept those pieces of feedback and kind of think about them and how I'd be better in the future. That sense of humility is really tough for a lot of people to grasp.
Yeah, but boy, the value in it, I always knew I had a follow through problem, but why? And, so through coaching, I've gained understanding on why I am the way I am. Just because I don't follow through doesn't mean that's really something I can really effectively fix. Mm-hmm. It's just because I'm wired that way. So as a leader, when I'm looking for team members, I got to find people that are complementary to that. So There's some people that they can't think up an idea or create a vision, but man, they can take a vision and just tear it up. And those are the people that a guy like me needs to have around him, because otherwise, I'll come up with a vision, and 2 days later, here's a new vision. I mean, and so I have to know that about myself so that I don't frustrate my team members, but I also have to have good implementers that can take that ball and run with it, and even run with it to the point of errors and mistakes. And that's probably been the biggest thing. And that's really the difference between, to me, a corporate person and an entrepreneurial person is you get a bunch of entrepreneurs around, and what do we like to talk about? We like to talk about our biggest failures and our biggest mistakes and the stupid stuff we've done. That's what we spend our time with. And my short time in the corporate world, mistakes are covered up. And
you don't bolster your resume with the mistakes that you've made to ascend the ladder, right?
You don't. And that's how you have to be in that world. And, we've had some great people come through our organization, but a lot of them, we've had some corporate minded people that just could not get what we're doing. And it's hard. And, fortunately I was, when I started this, I was young enough and flexible enough to where, you can change, but not everybody can. I mean, it just depends on, one thing I like about your podcast, you get a lot of people talking about growth mindsets, and if you adopt one of those, then you'll never stop. And so when things change, like the world's changing in 11 years, automotive repair has, I can't believe the difference in what we're fixing today and what's coming down the pike. We've got a lot of new stuff coming down, and you've got to pivot. You got to be looking 10 steps down the road from where you're at. And that's the stuff I love doing. And then I bring it back and I see who bites and who runs with it. And, and that kind of determines how we roll, so,
It's crazy to think about how quickly technology changes, even in the cars that we drive, right? I mean, in 2004, I had or at one point in time in my life, right, I had a 2004 BMW M3, one of the most amazing mechanical driving cars I've ever had. It's 2024, and now I have a Tesla that drives me around everywhere. Yeah. Completely different world that I'm living in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how are you kind of thinking about that trend change towards electric vehicles and all the other kind of stuff that's coming down the pipe?
Yeah, it's going to be a real thing. A lot of people in my industry think, these electrics are just a fad. It's going to go away. It's not going to go away. And I can tell you, the hybrid vehicles out there, especially in Toyota, those things are state of the art. They're awesome systems. So you've got to be able to repair those things. But you don't want to just have anybody stick their hand into a hybrid vehicle. A good way to get hurt. And and then there's just different systems and different testing equipment that you have to use. We're kind of looking at electrics right now. How do we get in there? I've got a guy that's he's what we call an ASE world class. So there's there's less than 2,000 of those guys in the country, and he's digging the electric stuff. And Tesla just opened a dealership here in Meridian, Idaho. Of all places. I remember when we first started seeing Teslas, if they had to have any work done, you had to put them on a tow truck and haul them to Utah.
Yeah.
It wasn't getting done here. And then I started seeing little vans that said Tesla on them, and a guy driving around with a screwdriver set and a laptop,
Literally.
And then now they've got a shop, and I drive by there at night, and you can see all the cars in there, and they're working on stuff. So, you'll probably never put a set of brakes on your Tesla. You won't need to. So a lot of those high wear things, starters, those kind of things, you don't have those in these electric cars, but you do have other issues. You have all the same interior stuff, and you got shocks on there, you got wheels and tires, and you still have all those kind of things. But the big thing with the electrics is just the electronic updating and that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, Tesla's technology is so awesome that that's really not a thing.
No, it's crazy. I mean, they have over-the-air updates. So like sometimes you'll wake up Christmas time coming up here pretty soon at the time we're recording this. Every year Tesla drops a big update. So you get like a new feature and things, which is wild. Back in 2017, my friend bought a Model X, right? So brand new, paid $120,000 for this car. And they sold him by saying, how much maintenance do you give to your vehicle currently? And he was like, well, I got to change my brakes. I got to change my oil. I got to do this. Like the only maintenance you're going to do on this vehicle is changing the washer fluid. Is that something that you can handle? And so that makes me think about, from somebody who's positioned to be able to support vehicles as they age, right? Are you thinking about how this might impact the way in which you guys do business? If there's not as many variables to a vehicle, does the model change to be more relationship based? Do the services change? What are you kind of thinking about?
Yeah, I think the model's definitely changing to a more relationship based model. And we've always carried that. We want customers for 10 years, not 10 minutes. We've got wonderful customers that, I want them to, like, if the tire light comes on in their car because the temperature just dropped from running in the 50s to 20s, I want them to just come by and know that we're going to take care of them. We're going to get that thing aired up and evened up. And, we're right across from a filling station, and I see people using that hose out there and putting the quarters in it. And, and I'm thinking, I really want our customers to, know that we love them enough to where when they come in, we're just going to take care of that kind of stuff. And we're just part of their life. We have people that just drop in to see how we're doing, which is, that's just awesome.
Best thing you could ask for right there.
Yeah. Well, I never even thought that would ever happen, and especially in an automotive repair business, but with the electrics coming on, there's just, there's always going to be something, the batteries do eventually go out.
They do.
But you do have to have special ratings and permissions. Like when the first time we had a Tesla up on our rack, we were actually doing tires for it, and they've got all these screws along the bottom of the car, and every one of them has a tamper seal on it, so that if somebody undoes that fastener to drop down that plate, they know it's been opened and all warranties off. So if you're a Tesla owner, you don't want anybody touching that car, but
including yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now I'm thinking I need to buy one so I can undo all those and see what's inside there.
Exactly. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. A business expense for some experimentation would be nice.
Absolutely.
So here's a question. Let's take this a step further, right? So we talk about, EVs and things like that. How are you thinking about the world of like artificial intelligence impacting this space in the future? Have you started to get curious about any of that?
Yeah. And I'm kind of excited about it. Actually, I think AI is going to, it's going to aid us in diagnostics. I think is one of the biggest areas where that can make an impact. We have a lot of people that are not coming into the trades, and so that means the guys that are in the trades are going to have to be able to do more. And so diagnostic is probably the toughest position to fill in an automotive repair shop, having somebody that's good at it, especially with the electronic nature of everything that's going on out there. So we've got to give those guys better tools to be able to diagnose things quicker. So I've been kind of, I've been looking at it. I've been to a couple of, like workshop things where they've been talking about it. Nobody's really talked about automotive specifically. But from where I'm at right now is I can understand that AI is really it gathers existing wisdom that's out there.
Yep.
And now there's a lot of wisdom out there, and a lot of it isn't good. We call it Google Garage. And I Googled it, and it says it's this, and it's like, well, it's good try.
Exactly.
But when you have the proper software and stuff, and then I think the strength is going to be in how you do inquiries into trying to zero in on the problem. And the better you can talk to that AI interface, the more you're going to be able to get out of it. So the trick right now is, and I think that's kind of what I see in the industry right now, is people are trying to figure out, how do we use this thing stage in our evolution. But I'm betting in 5 years we'll have AI pretty much built into all of our tools that are existing, and probably even some freestanding AI tools that we just haven't even invented yet. So
Got to stay curious, Brett. The future is bright to be that light in the automotive industry, but also add all of this technology we've been talking about as well.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen some really cool things like, biggest thing for an entrepreneur is documenting processes. And I've talked to a couple of guys. I'm in a group called Strategic Coach. And there's some guys in there that are really up on this thing, and they're using it to create, employee manuals and, legal documents. They can pull things, because these things pull from everywhere. So, but all of them tell you it's all in the inquiry to get there. And so that's the part I'm pretty excited about, because we're at, now with 2 locations, we've got a bigger need now to be documenting all of our processes, even though we are in a franchise model. It's a great model because, they give us enough to be dangerous, but you still have to, there's still a gap on how you run your individual business. So, with over 300 locations, every one of those stores has a slightly different culture and a different way of going about doing the same thing. So, having 2 locations, the key for us is continuity in process. And so that's kind of where I'm heading right now, is trying to see how I can do that to kind of streamline some of my processes and get a good written documentation of that. So,
well, I'm excited for the future, man. It's you've got the right leader at the helm who's curious enough about these technologies and how the space is changing to be able to adapt and morph to be able to meet the needs of the community. Which is so powerful. I want to give you an opportunity, because I'm a baseball guy, right? I want to give you your Babe Ruth moment to call your shot. What is 2025 going to look like for your 2 locations and what you guys are trying to accomplish this next year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be solidifying the team in the new location. We're pretty well there. Always looking for technicians. That's the war cry of anybody in our industry, is to get the thing fully staffed so that we can handle the volume that we need to be able to produce. That's going to be key. We're also looking at a partnership with American, what is it? AMS. It's basically that's a mobility company. They adapt vehicles for people with mobility impairments, and so like wheelchair vehicles, anything from hand controls to a ramp system. You can drive your wheelchair right in and up to the wheel, and I mean they're cool. And they're but there's not a lot of people that can work on those things. So we've been partnering with those guys with getting us well established as a service center. But we may even bring a dealership to the Boise market. So that's kind of something that we're kind of looking at. We'll see. I got to have a lot of permissions from the franchisor to make sure that we're not in a conflict. And but we've got a couple of guys that are really good at it, and AMS really likes our guys, and they really want us to be doing more with them. So we'll probably be looking at that as well. So that'd probably be it'll be more of a specialized function that we do, but it's needed. I tell you, these ramps and things are really complicated, really cool. I mean, they're just cool machines, but they're outside of the realm of what your typical automotive technician's going to be really doing. Not a lot of documentation. Like, how does this thing work? They really got to get in there and figure it out. So I think 2025 is going to be an exciting year for us, and I'm really looking forward to it. I just our little area here is still growing. Still got a lot of folks moving here, and a lot of gap in the service industry. So there's lots of opportunity, and the ability to serve a lot more people in 2025.
Well, Brett, it's easy to understand why you are the definition of Hart and Hustle, man. We've talked about your journey. We've talked about the hustle and the challenges that you've overcome in your career, but also your excitement and optimism for the future. I mean, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, man. Seriously.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad you reached out, and I've been enjoying listening to your podcast. You get some great guests on here, so it's like, man, this guy needs to be on Patreon or something.
Maybe 2025 is what we'll start that.
There you go. Yeah.
So part of our tradition here on the podcast, Brett, is we have one guest who wants to ask the next guest a blind question. Now, your question is coming from an amazing leader who's actually in the Kansas City area, who owns a foster, adopt, connect company, who has placed over 6,000 children in adoptions over the last 10 years, which is pretty crazy. Her question for you is, as your organization grows, what efforts do you make to create and sustain a positive organizational culture?
Wow, that's a great question. Mainly it's having those conversations early, often. There's a thing called the Nehemiah principle. Nehemiah was a prophet, and he was telling coaching the Jews to build the wall around the city, and his thing was banging the drum and keep them going. And he was just always telling them, reminding them what the vision was, because it was a huge undertaking. And so there, from that grew this concept of a Nehemiah principle. So that's who I have to be now. And when you get into multiple, I can't just jump on the counter anymore and write a ticket anymore. Because the system has moved beyond me too. So I say I'm the dumbest guy in here, but really my job is to be that Nehemiah guy that's on the wall. I'm not building the wall, but I'm coaching those that are building the wall, and I'm encouraging them every step of the way, and then having enough bandwidth to know them personally, because a lot of times, and I get this from a lot of guys that we hire. They've come from organizations where maybe they're not seen as people, they're seen as things or assets to be deployed. And really, I think, as we move forward into the future here, we have to value our people, and they have to be, they're all individuals, and they all have individual things. And so we've got to be, as leaders, we've got to be sensitive to that and do what we can do to support them, so that they can get to where they want to go. Because, at the end of the day, if my people aren't meeting their goals, we're never going to meet our goals as an organization. And so the Nehemiah guy is just beating that drum every day. And the message is, sometimes you say the message so many times you're just sick of it, and then you just got to say it some more. And you got to remind people why we're doing things, and who our customers are too. Is just be really cognizant of who our customer is, and what we do for them, and who it is. It can't just be a car. There's a family behind that car. And so that's kind of, going forward, and, as we may expand into some other areas, that'll be even tougher to do, but it becomes more and more of what I'm supposed to do. And then as a leader, I've got to evolve into that self-managing company where my people can do everything without me interfering. And when I get to there, then I will truly be, a CEO. I'll be, chief encouragement officer.
There you go. I love that. Well, Brett, it's easy to understand, man, why you are, once again, the definition of Hart and Hustle. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Seriously, I'm so excited to see where you take this amazing organization over the next couple of years, and I can't wait to have you back for another episode sometime.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see how yours goes too. So very cool. So,
all right, guys, we'll catch you in the next one. That's a wrap.
All right.